Hello, hello. Dr. Hines here. I want to talk about test anxiety. Just to touch on a couple of things on it. It affects students all grades, elementary, middle, and high, and even adults. When adults are trying to move forward with their lives, move forward with their careers, and they want to get some sort of certification or they want to obtain some sort of position, there's a test. And a lot of people that I've come across, whether they be adults or children, they always have some fear of the test. I don't test well, you know. And I believe it's a mental roadblock that a lot of people put in their own minds. And it's a fear of the unknown because there have been tests since as long as we can remember, whether they were written tests, whether they were physical tests. Um, I know if you want to be in the armed forces, you have to take a physical fitness test. In school, that's all you do is tests. And sometimes the argument is made that we overtest. Um, I won't argue that, especially in high school. But that's really the only way that we figured out in the educational world how we know what a student knows is through the form of an assessment or a test. When you get into the adult world, if you want to be a lawyer, you have to take the bar. If you want to be a doctor, there's a multiplicity of tests that you have to take, written, and then there's a residency you have to do. If you want to be a therapist, if you want to be a licensed professional counselor, you want to be a licensed social worker, you have to take a test. If you want to be a school counselor, you have to take a test. If you want to be a school principal, assistant principal, you have to take a test. If you're an electrician, you have to take a test. Certified electrician. If you want to be a certified HVAC, you have to take a test. So the point that I'm making is that in every facet of life, you're going to have to take a test at some point. If you want to be able to drive, you have to take and pass the test. So because we know that the test is coming and we know that we're going to be assessed at some point, to be afraid of something that you know is going to come. Now, if you're afraid because you're not prepared and you don't think you're going to do well, that's a different conversation. That's a different conversation. And that's one of the strategies that I always implement with students is being prepared for the assessment before the assessment. It's no worse feeling in the world than to know that you're going to be given a test. You take the test and you know you haven't prepared for the test. And to me, that's really where 50% of the test anxiety comes from, whether it be children or adults. You just didn't prepare. You go and take a driving test and you haven't even looked at the Department of Transportation book that each state provides that basically it gives you the answers to everything on the test. Now, there are fact questions, that won't change. And then there are questions where you have to read and come to a conclusion. And those type of questions seem to, scare, students and adults even more. Situational questions. Questions where you have to really do some critical thinking. But that's the only way that those who are presenting the test, whether teacher, state, whatever, can know that you know what to do in certain situations. You may know fact. You may know, for instance, if you going to be a therapist, you may know every psychotropic med out there. You know by heart, the diagnoses that people can get. But if you're in a situation with a client and a client exhibits a certain type of disposition or says a certain type of words, what do you do in that situation? Well, knowing facts and terms isn't going to be everything you need to know. You need to know how to apply those facts and terms. Just like if you're an electrician, when you go to everyone's house, everyone's electricity is hooked up differently. And so those situational questions lets the assessor know that you know what you're supposed to know so they can trust you in that situation. But I think when we're talking about high school students, I really think it hit hard for them when COVID hit. I would say 2020 is when it really got difficult for kids because they were separated in most cases from the physical school environment. So they didn't have their teachers' aides, tutors physically interacting with them. And some school districts across the country decided this is going to be the year where we're not going to test the students because of everything they're going through, the trauma, the stress. Same way with the teachers. It's hard to get 100% tutoring with our kids when they're used to an in-person environment. So we're just going to waive the test. And students were very happy about that. Educators were not. And now we're kind of seeing that the remnants of that decision 4 years later. This was recorded in 2024. COVID kind of hit the scene. The pandemic hit the scene in 2020. And now those students weren't assessed and they went to college. And now they're in an environment where they have to, take tests for a class, and they just weren't prepared to do that because they were able to get out of high school without a test. And so I think the pandemic really had a big effect on students. And I know you've heard in every educational report that's been put out, or, if you read a journal article, you read newspaper, they talk about how the pandemic set students back years as far as their educational development. And many school districts are doing whatever they can to try to make that up every school year that happened after the pandemic. And I just feel like we're just always going to be catching up because that learning loss set them back. But we know, those of us that are in the field of education, that until they come up with something else, tests will always be around. It will always be a part of what we do in the educational environment. So how do you talk to anyone, whether it be an adult, whether it be a child, about the fear of testing anxiety, and how to still be in a position to perform well? One, I always speak about is preparation. Preparation is key. First of all, knowing that you have an assessment coming, knowing what's on the assessment, and having a schedule of study and practice so that when the day of the test comes, you're actually kind of excited because you've put a lot of work into it. And some students and adults, even when they put a lot of work into it, they still have that fear because they just don't feel like they studied enough. I don't think I studied enough. And I will say there's a right way and there's a wrong way to study. Every type of test. There's no way I can go into that on this podcast or video cast today, but I will say this. There is a right way and there's a wrong way to study. And it's important that you have study time, but it's also important that you're studying the right way. I always tell students, one of the toughest subjects they always have in middle school, high school is math. Because with math, yes, there are formulas you can remember, but it's how do you apply those formulas with different numbers in different situations. Equations, how do you solve them on both ends to come up with an answer? And what I tell students to do is every night when you go home, whether you have homework to do or not, you need to take the time every night, and whatever subject you all are working on, many of you have access to a textbook or, a digital textbook, whether you have a Chromebook or a laptop. You should take the time to find equations in the book, and I would say just do 10 of them a night, 5 of them a night, and continue to work. Even if you get them wrong, you're practicing, and at some point, there's going to be that step that you missed that it's just going to click, and you're going to catch it. Now, yes, I was the type of student, this was me, this is not most students. When I had a problem with math, I would do problems in math even when I didn't have homework, and I would go to the teacher and say, listen, I did this on my own. Here's what I came up with, but the answer is supposed to be something different. What did I miss? Because sometimes with math, especially as you go further along, when you're doing algebra 2, when you're doing geometry, when you're doing calculus, when you're doing statistics, it's that step. It's that one or two steps that you miss or didn't do equally that will cause you to have a wrong answer. Now, that's just with math. When it comes to history, a lot of history is not just remembering facts, but understanding how the facts occurred. You know, you can tell me, when Virginia was ratified as a state, but can you talk about the political discourse that happened as far as making Virginia a state at the time it was made a state? And now there's this really big emphasis on, or really big focus on, critical thinking. Not just knowing the facts, but understanding the why and having a viewpoint on the why. And this is where a lot of our students really have problem, because it's causing them to think and to come up with a solution on their own, to come up with a reason on their own, to come up with an understanding and being able to substantiate that understanding based on what they think. And this is where the whole, and I know I'll be getting off topic a little bit, but it has a lot to do with it. Now you have the emergence of AI, now artificial intelligence. And so now these students are able to put in a question and it will formulate an answer, and they'll just cut and paste, maybe change a couple of words, and that's it. Okay? And it's taking away from our students really being able to look at facts, look at data, look at information, and critically come up with a response or an answer on their own. So, one is being prepared for the test. 2 is understanding the reason for the test. And I know in high school, regardless of state, there are state tests that you have to take simply because it's not only a part of you passing the class, it's a part of you graduating from high school. In middle school, it's a part of you moving up in grades. Okay? So, what they have done is they've begun testing kids right around second, third grade, depending upon what state you're in. And so they're introducing you to tests early on. So as you matriculate and go through elementary school, go through middle, go through high, you'll understand, hey, I got to take a test. I got to take a test. And even still, because I still work in the high school environment, you have students that run from the test. And part of it is they're not prepared. And part of it is, even though you have classroom sessions, you have parent sessions, they just don't understand, why do I have to take these tests? I just don't like tests. Well, yeah, you got to take the test. So being prepared, understand the reason for the test, and lastly is self-confidence. Sometimes self-talk is the best talk. Being able to say, I have all I need to be able to pass this test. And encouragement. And I think there's no better person to give a child encouragement when it comes to a test than their parent or their guardian. Yes, the teacher is supposed to do it. Yes, the staff is supposed to do it. The school council is supposed to do it. The school social worker is supposed to do it. Everybody's supposed to say, I believe in you. I know you can do it. But there's nothing like someone in your own home telling you, you got this. Because a lot of times when I have parent conferences, there's a lot of, the child needs to do this. The child needs to do that. I don't understand why they're not studying. I have them in a nice home. They have a nice room. They have everything they need. But the one thing that I will say that they're lacking is encouragement. I could be in $1 million home and have all the amenities in the world as a 16-year-old. But if I don't have support from my parent or my guardian or whoever is taking care of me, none of that's going to matter. Because I have to believe that I can do it. And at 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, I haven't developed enough to be able to tell myself I can do something in the midst of me not being sure I can do it. So I'm looking for encouragement. And I tell parents it's never a bad time to encourage a child. It's never a bad time. And even as an adult, you need encouragement. From your significant other, from your family, from your close friends. You need somebody that's going to say to you, hey, you got this. You know, you can do this. You were built for this. You know this information. And if you don't know it, then you need to take time so that you do know it. You know, there are certain tests when you get to be an adult that you have to pay for to take. And if you fail, you don't get your money back. So it's important that you prepare for the test before you get to the test. Testing is going to happen. It's going to happen in school. It's going to continue to happen in school. There are going to be different types of tests. And really what they're doing is try to change the assessment so that it's all not just multiple choice questions, but there's still going to be an assessment. Now they're bringing in types of tests where the student will be creating a portfolio of work from the beginning of class to the end, and that's going to count as an assessment. So it's not this one big assessment at the end, and I like that strategy, but it's still an assessment. It's still something that's a work that's going to be turned in and graded by someone, maybe someone they don't even know. You know, I can't see the SAT test going anywhere anytime soon. I can't see the ACT test going anywhere anytime soon. I can't see the GRE going away anytime soon. And those are tests that determine if you go to college, and those are tests that determine if you get into a grad school. So tests are going to be here. I don't think they're doing away with the driving test. So tests are going to be here. So if you're knowledgeable about what's on the test, okay, and you prepare for the test, and you have encouragement before you take the test, you'll feel more confident within. And if you're confident within, you're going to go into that test and you're going to do your best. And it's not so much whether if you pass or fail, but knowing within yourself, I gave my best effort. That's all you can do, is your best. This is Dr. Hines. Until next time.